Yo, what up? It's Khalid Salaam, back with another episode of the Peace Seekers Podcast. The title of this episode, Emotional Literacy, man. I told you all I was going to be talking about emotional literacy last week when we talked about emotional trauma that we deal with as men, stemming from our childhood and all of the things that we go through as young boys, you know. But in this episode, I'm going to be discussing emotional literacy and how I define emotional literacy and the 5 steps to being emotionally literate from my perspective, right? So let's hop right into it, man. Let's go ahead and break it down. Emotional literacy. I got notes too, so for me, the concept of emotional literacy is the idea of being able to express your emotions in the proper manner and being able to understand how to navigate all of the emotions that we go through as individuals, man, and specifically as men, because as men we don't really have the luxury of voicing our emotions and our opinions anyway at any time. We're not given as much leadway as women are in terms of expressing our emotions. So it's important to understand how to properly express the emotional spectrum, right? Because emotions range. They range. It's not all happiness. It's not all sadness. It's not all anger. There's a variation of these things. And happiness is not always exemplified the same way. Anger is not always exemplified the same way. Sadness, there's a range of these emotions. They take various forms, and you have to know how to deal with them as they come. A lot of people talk about financial literacy today. A lot of people talk about investing, whether it's real estate investments, stock, whether it's crypto. That is something that is spoken about a lot, right, in today's society, especially within the Black community. And I'm not upset with that. I think we do need that in the Black community. We do need to know how to invest. But in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think that we're kind of working a little bit backwards, because we know that we need money, but there are so many pieces to the puzzle in terms of how to create generational wealth, how to be financially literate, that I think a lot of times we take for granted. And a lot of those things are outside the scope of actually making money. In my opinion, when you put a community or a group of people into bondage for so long and subject them to the amount of pain and trauma that Black people have been through, you strip them away from being able to express themselves properly, which is why I said in the last episode that we have so many Black men in prison today. That's why Black boys are of some of the largest representation in the juvenile system, because they oftentimes do not know how to express themselves properly and end up either harming someone, harming themselves, or feeling the need to have this look of power, this look of money, right? We know how many people sell drugs and they go to prison and they go to the juvenile system, right? And oftentimes that stems from needing to look like the man. You got the jewelry, you got the cars, you got the clothes, and you look like a man. And these are all part of it, all stems from lack of emotional expression. Because a lot of times, if you don't have those J's, if you don't have the jewelry, if you don't have the fresh fits, you're looked down upon in the black community, right? And I think all of this comes from emotional trauma. So I say all that to say that we could talk a lot about financial literacy, but it's no point in teaching individuals financial literacy if they are not emotionally literate, because the emotional side of our existence is what allows us to understand that this money is not just mine. This is money for my future generations. This is money not only for myself, but for my wife, for my children, for my children's children, for my children's children's children. And it's hard to really grasp that concept if you're not emotionally literate. And not only that, but a lot of times, the more money that we make, if you are not emotionally sound, what ends up happening is you blow that money because you are trying to buy happiness. You're trying to buy not only happiness, but purchase things that you feel will protect you. Purchase things that will make you feel better about yourself. And all of it comes back to what? Emotional literacy. So let's get into the 5 steps, man. I already done spent enough time talking about this. Step number 1, healing. I relate this step to the aspects of our lives that are deep rooted, the trauma that's deep rooted, the things that are, deep down in the bottom of our psyche, right? There are a lot of issues that we deal with, especially as men and especially as black men, that stem from our childhood. And it is essential that we heal from these aspects, because these things that are deep rooted tend to affect how we express ourselves day to day. But they're like they're below the surface. So you may react in a way in which that is not proper to something you're dealing with in the moment. But you're really reacting the way that you react because of issues that could be stemming from years prior, all the way back to your childhood, right? And so this aspect of healing is important, because I could tell you, okay, when you get mad, react this way. But if your anger is actually stemming from prior experiences and not so much what is going on in the moment, me telling you to react in the way I'm telling you to react is not really helping you deal with your emotions. It's really putting a blanket over it. It's putting a cover over top of it, right? When I talk about healing, I always suggest therapy. Reason being is, I always say that therapy is putting a face to the enemy, right? Because when you're conversing with a clinician, they're able to utilize their skill set they're able to utilize their level of study to define terms and behaviors that they are able to notice that you exhibit, right? Things that individuals who don't have their level of knowledge and their level of expertise may not be able to point out for you, right? And I'll take myself as an example. When I was, I believe, 17, I went to a licensed therapist for the first time. This was when I was dealing with depression, right? But at the time, I didn't know it was depression. And I had all of these symptoms. I would wake up most days and cry. And I mean, like, really bawl my eyes out crying. And I had nothing that I could pin it to, nothing that I could pin those tears to. I would just wake up, sit in my bed for a while, and tears would just start rolling down my face. I had suicidal thoughts, thoughts of wanting to take my own life. I had times where the smallest things would just irritate me to no end and make me so angry, things that people would do, things that people would say. It would spark something in me. And I realized that something was not right with me, but I did not know what it was. So when I went to a licensed therapist for the first time and I sat down in his office, and he asked me a series of questions, and I started to describe what I was dealing with, what I was going through. And it was right there in the office that I was diagnosed with major depression, right? Not just minor, but major depression, as well as anxiety. Before that, I always thought depression was just like, oh, you're crying and, you're soft. What I tell you, back to childhood. In the Black community, we are so against therapy. People are coming around to it now because mental health is becoming something that is talked about. But back at this time, it wasn't like how it is today. And so when he explained what depression was and the symptoms of depression and how depression could be passed down, right? If you come from a family where members in your family have experienced depression, you're more likely to experience it. He was able to define it, both depression and anxiety for me, show me how the symptoms that I was having related closely in line with depression and anxiety. And that was able to give me a name to what I was feeling. It was able to give me a face to the enemy. I was able to see my enemy now, because before it was just all of these feelings and these emotions, and I couldn't really define it. And things that we can't define oftentimes cause us panic. They cause us anxiety, because as human beings, we naturally have a fear of not knowing. So in that moment, though I was not healed, there was a weight lifted off of my shoulders, a relief, a feeling of relief, because it's like, oh, I'm not just crazy. I'm not just emotional. I'm not just soft. I'm actually dealing with a mental health issue. And then what I was able to do is take those terms and research, both through myself and help of the therapist, what are some steps that can be taken to overcome depression and anxiety, such as medication, such as continuous sessions of therapy, such as changing your lifestyle habits, etc., etc., etc. And this is why I think this step is so important, because not only will a therapist be able to define terms for you using their skill set, they will also be able to refer you to a psychiatrist in the event that they do suggest medication. They are also able to help you in coming up with practical steps that you can apply to your life during these moments of depression, during these moments of anxiety, right? And that could be of some of the most important things, man. Putting a face to the enemy. If you don't know what you're fighting, how can you fight? It's like fighting with a blindfold over your eyes, with your eyes closed, with no lights, fighting in the dark, you know? And one of the biggest things about therapy that I think helps is not only being able to define terms, it's not only being able to apply a face to the enemy and come up with solutions, but a lot of times you're able to find out what your triggers are, the things that actually trigger you. And this falls in line with practical steps that you can utilize, but just knowing what your triggers are allows for you to be able to separate yourself from people who possibly cause you depression, places that possibly cause depression or anxiety, activities that you may do on a day-to-day basis that trigger you. And sometimes that could be half the battle, is knowing your triggers, right? Knowing what triggers you, so that's step number 1. Step number 2. Step number 2 for me is very similar to healing or therapy. But I find that seeking help from the individuals who are in your close-knit circle, right? The individuals that you trust the most. I find that this is a good option in between those sessions of therapy, those therapy sessions, right? This is a good buffer because you may not feel comfortable going to a therapist about everything. And sometimes you may not be able to go to a therapist, but being able to have a close-knit circle of individuals that you can rely on to advise you in many of these situations in which you are feeling down or going through something, right? I think though they are important, it is more important for you to be intentional with the individuals that you claim to be in your close-knit circle. Because I don't personally believe in divulging all of your emotions and things you're going through with everybody. I think these individuals need to be of a certain standard and a certain criteria. I think that this close-knit circle should be no more than 1 to 3 people. And I really lean closer to 1 to 2. But I seriously say no more than 3, because the more people you allow into your emotional bubble, if you will, the more chance you have of creating a state of anxiety for yourself, especially if you're an overthinker, because it gives more people to question on whether or not their integrity stands, right? I think these individuals have to have a level of knowledge. They have to have a level of experience, right? That's why I oftentimes say that the best people to have around you are people who are maybe a few years older than you, a father, an uncle, someone who may have 15, 20 years on you, 30 years on you, who has quite possibly experienced what you have experienced, been through it, lived through it, and maybe even made mistakes along the way, but was able to learn from that. You want someone who's able to utilize a certain level of skill, a certain level of knowledge and wisdom to advise you. I also suggest that these individuals are strong in their approach. They don't have to be bashful, but they cannot be scared to advise you and correct you in moments that you may actually be wrong. When suffering from depression and anxiety, you don't really want anyone who's going to lie to you. They have to be able to understand you and know you, which is why I always say that these people should not be people that you just met. They should have known you for a good portion of your life so that they can understand the approach that they need to take, so they can be direct yet still caring, right? Because everyone's approach is not the same, and how you as an individual need to be approached may not be the same as everybody else, right? Some people can't take the harsh truths. Sometimes they need the truth, but they need it soft. So to have individuals who really know you on a personal level, but still have a level of knowledge and wisdom and a level of strength and integrity where they can advise you the way you need to be advised, but in a way in which you understand when and where you went wrong. These are of some of the strongest characteristics that I think these individuals need to have, who you go to in these times, go to in these moments. And really, to be honest, the people you should call friends, right? The people who are in your circle, your group, your guys, they need to have these characteristics. And one thing that you need to pay close attention to, which is a characteristic you don't want these individuals to have, but something that you need to pay attention to so you know whether or not you can really trust them. And that is, if you're considering an individual who has divulged another person's secrets or emotional traumas and battles to you, it's quite likely that you won't be able to trust them. I think you usually find all of these characteristics, the good characteristics, in individuals like your father, individuals like your brothers, maybe older brothers or uncles. And I say them first because they'll tend to have some years on you. But in the event that you can't go to any of those individuals, maybe you don't have any uncles, maybe, your father's not in your life, whatever the case may be, just having some close men who are around you, who are upon strength, right? Integrity, and are always in a pursuit for knowledge and to be better. I think these are the individuals that you'll want to rely on. The next step, meditation. Let me go straight to the notes for this. I'm gonna just tell y'all what I have written down, because this one is important. In many of the cases that we feel emotional or we feel things taking a toll on us, a common way to clear our minds of these things is through meditation. Meditation can be defined in many different ways and incorporate many different practices, right? For this reason, I'm not going to actually define meditation, because meditation is different for everyone, right? But I'll share with you guys what I think, in my opinion, should be the intention behind meditation. I believe meditation should be utilized in the act or desire of becoming one with yourself. It could be something done regularly. It could be something that is done when you see fit. Or what I think is best is a combination of the two, right? I think in the moments that you are feeling a lack of control, a feeling of anxiousness, I think that taking time to reset yourself can be highly beneficial. When I talk about meditation, I suggest 30 minutes to an hour each evening that you can take to yourself to what? Become one with yourself, like I said. This could be accomplished through breathing exercises, stretching. I'm sure many people are familiar with the idea of counting, you know, counting down from like 100, counting down from 50 until you get to 0, right? I like the idea of breathing exercises, right? Because I think the act of breathing is something that we truly take for granted. It's really a blessing that we don't even think about because we just do it naturally, right? So the idea of taking a deep breath, following that oxygen through your body to your lungs, and exhaling, right? It not only humbles you, it's not only a reminder, but what better way to become one with yourself than to actually feel your body working, right? Something that we, like I said, take for granted, something that is so subtle, the act of breathing, that feeling of taking a deep breath and exhaling, I think is truly a great way to become one with yourself. It not only slows the heart rate and brings patience and contentment to the body, comfort to the body, but it is a reminder of your humanness, if you will, right? I think that meditation is not something that you always have to schedule. It doesn't have to be something that is done every day, though I suggest every day. It can be useful in situations of high stress as well. Like I said, those breathing exercises. When you are angry, when you are sad, when you are mad, these things raise the heart rate. Even when you're happy, these things raise the heart rate. So to be able to take deep breaths, to be able to count down and focus on the emotion so that you can power through it and heal in the moment, breathing exercises are great for that, in my opinion. I think that on the last note with meditation, as I said, meditation can be defined in many different ways. I think you have to study and find the practices that you enjoy and that work best for you, and make I guess, in a sense, a armory of those things. Utilize as many of those tools that you can, daily, and especially in your time of need, um, so that you can heal in the moment. Many of these steps are going to refer to those momentary emotions, those things you feel in the moment. But the step number one with healing, the reason that one is so important is because healing fixes the deep rooted issues. That's where the trauma really lies for individuals. But the following steps are steps that can be utilized and practiced in the moment of feeling emotions, and meditation is one of them. The next step after that, after meditation for me, is charity. People are like, what does charity have to do with emotions? I'm about to tell you. For me, one of the greatest acts that we can do is to give, because giving not only benefits the individuals that we are aiming to help, but it brings joy to us as individuals subconsciously. It's kind of in a sense, a selfish thing, but it is necessary. I think you'll find that most religions preach about charity. As Muslims, we pay zakat, we give in charity, right? Giving to the needy, giving to the poor, giving to the helpless, the homeless, giving to the young child, giving to those in need. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that smiling in the face of your brother is charity. To just simply smile at someone can oftentimes bring a smile to people's face, right? And the beautiful thing about charity, in my opinion, is that when you are down and you feel that you are at your lowest, charity works wonders for an individual. Because not only do you feel a connection to someone, because a lot of times as depressed people, we tend to isolate ourselves. So not only do you feel a sense of a connection to someone, their joy brings you joy. And it also, in a sense, humbles you because you are able to see positive emotions, not only from yourself, but from the individual that you are aiding. But you are able to see that with hardship comes ease. You know, that's one of the verses of the Quran, by the way. But with hardship, with hardship comes ease, because you're able to see the transition. You're able to feel the transition of anger and sadness to joy and to happiness, right? So that step is relatively short. I really think there's not really much to be said about that, other than to give in charity. Right? The last step, in my opinion, is the most important. Right? I think of all these things, this is the most important because, well, let me tell you what it is. This step is prayer, right? Prayer is such a important aspect because if you notice, all of the other steps that I've given, there's a relationship aspect to them. Whether it's healing through therapy, you have a connection with a clinical psychologist or a clinician, a therapist, who can define terms for you that we utilize in this world. Whether it's seeking help, going to your peer group, going to the individuals that you have around you and seeking their assistance. It could be meditation, which is becoming one with yourself. Charity, which is a connection with others, but in a position of you giving something and not taking something away from someone else. But prayer is so important because not only is it the connection between you and the one who created you. And if you go back to months ago, when I spoke about the 3-question theory, the first question of the 3-question theory is, what created our existence? And in that episode, I talked about being a Muslim. Obviously, I believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything that exists. And I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carries the attributes necessary to create our existence as we see it. And you fast forward to now with emotional literacy, when I'm talking about prayer. Prayer is the tool utilized to connect you, not with yourself, not with your friends, not with individuals in need, not with a therapist, but to the one who created you, who created me, and created all of the things that we know, and created us to function in the manner that we do. Prayer is the tool that we utilize to connect to Him, to ask for things that no one else could give us, the happiness no one else could give us, the connection no one else could give us, the terms that no one else, the guidance that no one else has the ability to give. I'm sure some people will listen to this and you may not be a believer. You may not be a Muslim. You may not believe in God at all. You may not believe Islam is the truth. All I can say is my testimony, right? And in my experience, this has been the most useful step of emotional literacy. Because if you go back to the last episode, I talked about without being able to properly express your emotions, you cannot build relationships. You cannot sustain relationships because you will never be able to give a level of yourself to the individuals that you need to give yourself to. The 5 steps of emotional literacy are more than just expressing your emotions. It is essential to building prosperous relationships, strong relationships. Without those 5 steps, you have next to nothing. You go back to the beginning of this episode, I talked about financial literacy. What is financial literacy? Building that bond with money, building that bond with wealth. Emotional literacy is building that bond with the individuals, with the people, and most importantly, not a person, but your Lord, the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not a Muslim preacher, you know what I'm saying? I'm not an imam, I'm not a sheikh, you know. I'm not a student of knowledge. I'm not a scholar, right? But these are the things that have worked for me, and this is what I know. So with that being said, let's sum up the 5 steps, man. Step number 1 is healing. Putting a face to the enemy. My suggestion was what? Therapy. Therapy gives you definitive terms and practical solutions from the skill set of someone who has studied it for years. The second step is seeking help. Keeping a close-knit group of individuals who have a level of knowledge and a level of wisdom and strength in their approach and integrity so that they can advise you from a place of love, a place of respect, but at the same time keep you accountable. Step number 3 was meditation, I believe, right? Yeah, meditation. The act of becoming one with yourself, utilizing your own experiences, knowledge, wisdom, and communicating with yourself in those times that you can't rely on your peer group, you can't rely on a therapist, right? Step number 4 was giving in charity, establishing that human connection, humbling yourself, giving to others, and creating those natural levels and expressions of love, happiness, and peace by giving to others. Step number 5, again, of the most important, establishing the prayer, connecting yourself, not with your friends or your peer group, not with a therapist, but with the one who created you, who fashioned you, who designed you, who took you through all of the things that you've been through in your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, blessed you with life, blessed you with the people you have around you, blessed you with the ability to breathe, blessed you with the ability to seek help through therapy, blessed you with the ability to give in charity. Even if you're at the bottom of the bottom where you have no money, you can just give a smile, right? Establishing that connection with the creator of all things. In the Quran, I'll leave you all with this. In the Quran, in the second chapter, verse 43, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and establish the prayer and give charity and bow with those who bow in worship and obedience. And in verse 45, he says, and seek help. And seek help through patience and prayer. And indeed, it is difficult except for the humbly submissive. What is so important about these verses? They sum up everything that I've spoken about thus far. Establish the prayer. That's number one. Give charity. Bow with those who bow in worship and obedience. Bow with those who should be of the men who are in that peer group that I spoke about. Seek help through patience and prayer. And indeed, it is difficult except for the humbly submissive. When you humble yourself and when you submit yourself to the Creator, you are able to understand that all of the things that we go through in life emotionally, this is important, all of the things that we go through in life, the good, the bad, the ugly, are all tests. They're all tests, but they're all blessings. And they could all be utilized for the growth. And for those who live their life with that kind of mindset, success is inevitable, I would say. With that being said, man, I've been here for too long. It's time for me to get up out of here. It's been your boy Khalid Salaam. We talked about emotional literacy today. Next week, man, I got so many things cooking. So, emotional literacy, suicide prevention hotline, peaceseekersbrand.com. What more do you need? It's Khalid Salaam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings be upon everybody. And I wish you nothing but emotional success. Peace.